staying on top of the market these days feels like a full-time job, doesn't it? Just so much information flying around.
It really does. That's why we're here, though, trying to cut through some of that noise.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive, taking a close look at something pretty interesting, a slice of the financial world in action.
Yeah, we've got a series of real-time posts from a Discord server, one focused on stock market chat, all from May 6th, 2025.
Right. So think of it like being a fly on the wall, watching traders react in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Seeing the news they were seeing, the stocks catching their eye, potential trades they were kicking around, all happening live, basically.
So our mission today really is to pull out the key insights from these like rapid fire updates. What was grabbing the attention of this specific online community?
What were the big themes? What was driving the conversation and sort of the sentiment? Let's jump in.
Okay, first up, this big piece of news that seemed to hit early. The U.S. Treasury Secretary potentially meeting their Chinese counterpart in Switzerland for tariff talks.
Yeah, and the reaction on the server was immediate. The comment was super bullish.
Super bullish, that says a lot.
It really does. It shows just how sensitive the market, or at least this community, is to any hint of easing trade tensions between the U.S. and China, even just the possibility of talks.
Yeah, it's like a major positive signal for them. Reflects how much these trade tensions hang over everything.
Absolutely. Any sign of de-escalation is seen as a potential boost for growth, for earnings. It directly impacts confidence.
And it's funny how other news seemed to get pushed aside because of it. Like later on, there was talk about India and Pakistan.
Right, but someone basically commented that the India-Pakistan situation was not important anymore compared to the tariff news.
Especially since that came right after someone mentioned Indian officials were also reporting good progress on tariffs. It's all about the U.S.-China angle.
It really highlights that dynamic, doesn't it? How U.S.-China relations just dominate the global market mood. Progress there, even if it's just talk, can overshadow other pretty serious geopolitical stuff.
Makes sense. Sectors tied to trade, obviously, would react strongly.
Oh, definitely. Anything hit by tariffs or involved in global supply chains, they'd be watching closely.
Okay, so shifting from that global scale to crypto.
Yeah.
Bitcoin was another big topic?
Yeah, there was that pretty direct statement. BTC/USD, when it rises, is a sign the market will rise.
So they're seeing Bitcoin as a kind of indicator for the broader market.
It seems like it. For some investors, yeah, Bitcoin's price is like a barometer for risk appetite. If Bitcoin's going up, maybe investors are more willing to take on risk elsewhere.
And then there was speculation about Chinese buying, pushing it even higher, and the miners.
Mm-hmm. Pushing Bitcoin and related mining stocks up, potentially. They mentioned a level to watch above 95.5K, suggests they felt there was more upward momentum coming.
But here's the twist, right? The observation that the mining stocks themselves weren't actually moving up with Bitcoin at that point.
Exactly. That was really interesting. And they floated three possible reasons,
Yeah, what were they again?
One, maybe the miners anticipated a Bitcoin price drop coming soon. Two, just a delayed reaction, the stocks lagging behind the asset. Or three, simply that trading in those mining stocks hadn't really kicked off yet that day.
That disconnect is pretty telling.
It is. It raises questions about that relationship between an asset like Bitcoin and the companies involved in its infrastructure. Are the miners seeing something else? Headwinds, maybe?
Or just slower off the mark.
Could be. Or maybe, like they said, just waiting for trading volume. And they mentioned FXI, Baby, and KWEB.
Oh yeah, the Chinese tech stocks and ETF, how did that connect?
Well, they mentioned them in relation to the miners also not reacting, suggesting maybe it was a broader thing they were seeing, like certain sectors with China exposure weren't immediately responding to other signals. Interesting parallel, maybe.
Gotcha. Okay, let's dive into some specific stock tickers they were throwing around. AMD and ANET, their calls are up. What's that signal?
Basically, increased bullish interest. Call options give you the right to buy a stock at a certain price. So more activity in calls often means traders are betting the price will go up, a sign of positive momentum or at least speculation.
Okay. And then gold. With the hope for this negotiation, gold is falling. That's the classic inverse relationship, right?
Precisely. Gold is the traditional safe haven. So if optimism is rising, maybe because of these potential trade talks, investors tend to shift away from safety and towards riskier assets. So gold price tends to dip.
Makes sense. Now, PLTR seemed to be on a bit of a wild ride.
Yeah, it dropped 12% initially, which sounds pretty bad.
But then someone shared a link, kind of arguing for a more positive long-term view, pointing out the overall trend was still up.
Exactly. Which shows how perspective matters. A big one-day drop might look scary, but in the context of a longer uptrend, some might see it as just a pullback, or even potentially a buying opportunity.
And later someone noted it got pretty close to 15% down, so still volatile.
Definitely. Shows it was being watched closely.
We also saw LMND mentioned lemonade, I guess. Someone shared a summary. Always good to see that kind of info sharing.
Yeah, community aspect. And then MARA and MSTR were listed just as setups. What does setup usually mean here? It typically means a trader sees a specific pattern or price level forming on the chart, something that suggests a potential entry point for a trade based on technical analysis. So they're watching MARI and MSTR, likely because they're crypto-related, for one of these patterns to trigger.
Okay. And CELH was a continuation of a previous setup, so something ongoing.
Right, already on their radar.
AMD came up again later, too. If it held its level till the next day, it would break its all-time high.
Which is a big deal technically. Breaking an all-time high means, theoretically, no past resistance levels above it.
But they added a note of caution, right? Don't just assume it rockets higher immediately.
Exactly. Good caution. Breakouts are significant, but they don't always mean a straight lineup. You can get pullbacks, consolidation. It's not automatic.
Then some specific price levels. NNE 25 was being watched, and OKLO 28 reported as having broken through that level.
Yeah, and with the next target mentioned, 31. And crucially, a stop loss was also indicated.
Right, the stop loss. For anyone maybe less familiar, what's the point of that?
It's pure risk management. It's an order you place to automatically sell your stock if it drops to a certain price. So for OKLO, they had a target of 31, but they also had a preset exit point, the stop loss, to limit their potential loss if the trade went against them. Right. Really important tool.
Definitely. Okay, let's just quickly touch on the geopolitics again, that India action in Pakistani territory.
Yeah, the key detail that seemed important to the discussion was that it apparently didn't involve attacking soldiers.
Which seemed to be why it didn't escalate immediately, or why the market reaction was maybe muted?
That seems to be the interpretation, yes. Targeted action versus state-on-state conflict is a huge difference in terms of perceived risk. But, as noted, they were still monitoring it. Geopolitical stuff can change fast.
Always lurking in the background. And finally, this cryptic teaser. World-shattering announcement coming soon, untranslated.
Yeah. That adds a bit of intrigue, doesn't it?
Or just noise.
Could be either. Very common in these fast-paced online forums. Generates buzz, speculation. But you have to be careful not to trade on just rumors like that. Need substance.
So pulling it all together from this May 6th snapshot, clearly the U.S.-China trade talk possibility was huge, driving optimism.
Definitely the dominant theme. And then that interesting split we saw in crypto, Bitcoin moving, but miners lagging, at least initially.
Yeah, and lots of focus on individual stocks, specific price levels, setups, risk management like stop losses, very active monitoring.
It gives us a really valuable glimpse, doesn't it, into the real-time thinking and focus of this particular trading community on that specific day.
It really does. It's a window into what was actually capturing attention and maybe influencing decisions.
Which leads to a bigger question, I think, for you listening.
Yeah.
Well, you see these rapid-fire, unfiltered discussions happening online. Does this kind of real-time chatter offer unique insights? Maybe signals you wouldn't get from traditional news until later? Could it be like an early warning system for market shifts?
Or does it just add to the confusion, amplify the noise, making it harder to see the real signals through all the speculation and sometimes misinformation?
Exactly. Is it a valuable edge or just another layer of complexity? Yeah. Something to definitely think about as you navigate this information landscape we're all in.